and welcome back to the studio. Today we are going to be doing a gentle hips routine on the floor. You're not going to need very much equipment, but you are going to need your yoga strap. Please don't use a resistance band because resistance bands, ironically, are not resistant-y enough for what we need today. And you're also going to need a yoga block or something similar. So it could be a firm pillow or a firm cushion, perhaps folded in half. But if you are going to carry on doing my classes, investing in 2 yoga blocks of the same size is going to prove very helpful. You're also going to potentially need some cushions close to hand as well. So with every routine that we do, I always advise having a couple of cushions to potentially put underneath your head, because they may make you feel really quite different in the exercises. So let's get started. We're going to come down to the floor and we're going to take what we call hook-lying position, like so. And before we start moving our hips or doing anything with our hips, I want you just to kind of tune into how your body feels whilst you're in this position. So you've got knees bent and feet flat on the floor. Your palms are facing up. If you're lying here and you're noticing that, I can feel that this is happening to me, so I am going to get a cushion to put under my head. But if you're laying here and you feel like the bottom of your rib cage at the back is kind of lifting up and flaring towards the ceiling, so actually if I pull up my top, you might be able to see here how my rib cage is kind of lifting upwards. I feel a little bit tense in my mid-back. I want you to consider putting a cushion or putting 2 cushions underneath your head, because having the elevation through your head is going to help you stay grounded through your rib cage, which is going to give you better access to the hip muscles that we want to wake up today. The other thing to look out for is if you feel like your shoulders are really rounding up and away from the floor, and or your head is tilting backwards like this, so you've got a bit of a crick in your neck, that's another sign that you need to have a pillow underneath your head. So if this is the first time you're doing this routine, I thoroughly recommend that you get your cushion, pop it under your head and give it a go with that to start with, because you don't know how good it's going to feel until you try it with the cushion. So it's going to help relax off your thoracic spine and shoulders more easily. There's no kind of good that comes from your body just tensing up and not being able to let go. So now that I've put the pillow under my head, I can feel how my lower rib cage is just grounded onto the floor without me having to do anything to kind of put it there. Palms are facing up. And before we get started with our 5 exercises today, I want you to really come back to your breath. So it might be worth just spending a couple of minutes in this position, breathing in and out of your nose, sending the breath into your diaphragm. So we want to see your belly expanding and falling through your breath, rather than it being that it's your chest heaving up and down or your shoulders moving up and down, or really feeling like all of your breath is kind of stuck up here. We're using our nose to breathe deeply into our lower belly, and this is going to help calm our nervous system down, as well as use the muscles of respiration for what they are actually designed to do, breathing. The next thing that you're going to consider, just while you're having a little lay down here and settling in and focusing on the breath, is we are really trying to keep the kneecaps in alignment with the hips, the ankles in alignment with the knees, and the toes in alignment with the ankles. So one of the biggest things that I see when people get into this position is either that their knees hang out a little bit wide or their knees droop in together. That's the kind of the first thing. So we're really making sure that the direction of the kneecap marries up with the hip joint as much as possible. But the next thing you have to be really wary of is what your feet are doing. So most people will have their feet wider than their knees, and they'll have their toes wider than their ankles. So I want you to think about your toes and your ankles as being like different entities. So you're going to walk your feet in, and this, you can have someone watch you maybe, or you can film yourself the first few times that you do this, or in a mirror, so that you're a bit more cognizant of where your feet are. But you're trying to keep your ankles in alignment with your knees, and not just the ankles in alignment with your knees. You're thinking about the toes. So here, my ankles, knees and hips are in alignment, but the toes is splaying off out to the side. So I'm rotating my feet in around the ankle and placing the balls of the feet back down on the floor. We are trying our absolute utmost to keep the middle of the toes, the middle of the ankles, the middle of the knees and the middle of the hips in alignment throughout. Okay, so let's move on to our first hip exercise. We're going to roll our pelvis forwards into what we call an anteriorly rotated position. So the pelvis rolls forwards, which creates a little bit of an arch in the lower back. Creating an arch in the lower back is occurring through the pelvis moving forwards, not the rib cage flaring up. So sometimes when I ask people to roll their pelvis forwards, what they actually do is kind of puff their rib cage upwards. The rib cage stays kind of still and grounded, the pelvis rocks forward like this. You're keeping that pelvis in that rocked forward position. The palms are facing up. What we're going to do with our left foot, but I'm going to demonstrate this on my right foot just so that the camera can capture it clearly, is we're going to keep the toes on the floor and we're going to keep the toes relaxed. The ball of the foot stays down, but we elevate the ankle off the floor as much as we can like this. But you are still trying to keep your knee, your ankle and your toes all in alignment with the hip. So you're not going up really, really high if that means that your knee kind of falls out or fall in. You might notice that just through doing this movement, you get a cramp or work happening through your calf or through your foot. That's a good thing. It just tells you that your foot and your calf are waking up differently. So I'm going to be doing this on my left foot to start with. It's going to stay in this position throughout. I've still got to try and keep that tracking through the leg with the alignment, and I'm still keeping my pelvis driving forwards, okay? So I'm going to put that right foot down, and I'm now lifting my left foot, which is going to stay in that position throughout the next 20 reps that we're going to do. The pelvis drives forward, upper body stays completely relaxed. So the palms, the arms, the shoulders, the breath, the jaw, the neck are all relaxed. We're keeping that steady breathing going through our belly, and we are not using our abdominals for the next thing that we're going to do. So you may notice that your belly really wants to grip on. That is a compensation. We want this exercise to be felt deeply in the hip flexor here. So you might notice that it's your belly, you might notice that it's your quads, that's quite common, and it shouldn't be either of those things, but as you get more and more into the exercise, you'll hopefully start noticing it focusing more where the hip meets the pelvis. So pelvis stays tilted forward, slight arch in lower back, the pelvis stays still throughout, upper body including the belly stays relaxed, focusing on that breath, and we are going to do tiny lifts through the knee, up and down like this. So I'm not taking the knee as far as I can towards my chest, because if I do that, I'm going to be quite likely to rock my pelvis down. We're literally just doing baby movements because we're trying to isolate a muscle. There are no prizes to be won here through you getting a crazy range of movement if that means that you're then compensating. So we're literally just lifting the knee up and down, 2 or 3 inches, the pelvis stays driving forward, upper body relaxed, breathing is nice and steady, and we're remembering that lift through the left ankle as we do it. You're not kicking the foot forwards, you're lifting the knee up and down like this. So I like to say, imagine that there's a fishing line pulling your knee out of the water. Remember to drive forwards through the pelvis, and hopefully if you're doing things correctly and you listen to all the cues, at some point you'll notice your hip switch on, but it might take quite a few reps before that happens. So upper body stays relaxed, keep the left ankle lifted, pelvis driving forwards, belly relaxed. Off we go, 20 reps on this right leg, trying to keep both knees tracking in alignment with the hip. Off we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. And we'll put that leg down. So we're going to swap sides. So making sure that our feet haven't lost their position. So we're really considering the middle of our toes, ankles, knees and hips in alignment. Rocking the pelvis forwards, but keeping the rib cage kind of down. We're not puffing the rib cage up because that might make us tense in our mid to lower back. This time, I'm lifting up my right ankle and keeping it there. I'm not pointing my toes, the toes are flat on the floor and the pivot point is occurring around the big toe joint. We're going to try and keep the right knee, right ankle, right toes in alignment with the hip, and we're going to do that same motion on the left hand side that we did before. We're lifting the knee up and down a couple of inches, we're not kicking the foot forwards. Upper body stays as relaxed as it can do, but you might notice how your upper body wants to tense up and hold on as you're trying to move your hips, and that's teaching you that your upper body compensates for a lack of function at your hips. So you're just moving through this nice and slowly, and if you feel yourself tensing up or losing your breath, back out of the exercise a little bit, go a little bit more slowly, aim for a smaller range of movement and just be a little bit more mindful. Okay, 20 on the left hand side, off we go. And we're noting in our head differences from side to side as well. So off we go, 1, 2, because I know that I am significantly weaker through my left hip than I am my right hip. So it takes a lot longer for me to feel this kind of work happening in my left hip flexor. 6, 7, 8. Calm, steady breath. Relaxing the hands and the jaw and the upper body and the belly. 11, 12. Make sure the foot touches the floor in between each rep. So you're not hovering the foot off the floor, it's touching the floor in between. 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. Good job. So we're going to do another set of 20 on each side before we move on to the next exercise. Pelvis tilts forwards, upper body relaxed, keeping the toes down on that left foot. We're lifting the left heel, trying to keep that left leg steady, tracking us all the way from the toe to the hip, watching that the knee doesn't fall in or out. We're moving our right knee up and down. The foot follows, the foot is not kicking up. 3. Making sure the foot touches the ground in between and trying to relax off any tension that we might feel arising through our shoulders and our head. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Taking breaks whenever you need. So you might notice that you're getting really tired in your hips, or they might be cramping, or your calf might be cramping. And that's fine, just take a break. You don't have to battle through just because I'm doing something. 17, 18, 19, and 20. And then settling back down again, tilting pelvis forwards, upper body relaxing, right ankle lifts up, toes on the floor, everything tracking in a straight line. 20 on that left leg, off we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Nice and slowly. The slower you do things, the better you'll do them. 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. Cool. So what we did there was our hook line isolated hip flexor lifts. So we isolated our primary hip flexors, which you may have heard of before, called the psoas muscle or the iliopsoas, but they should be feeling a nice old burn in the front of the hips there if they were switching on correctly. And if you weren't feeling it there, don't be disheartened, but just keep trying to do this menu, provided that it doesn't hurt you, and hopefully at some point soon you'll notice your hips switching on at the top. So we're going to put our block in between our knees, and when we put the block in between the knees, we put it what I call the medium way. So we don't want the narrow way, and we don't want the wide way. Generally speaking, it does depend a bit on the size of your yoga block, but you want the medium way, so that when it goes in between your knees, just like you did before, your kneecaps are tracking in a straight line with my hips. Sorry, with my hips, with your hips. So you just want to make sure that the kneecap is kind of facing forwards rather than rotating out or rotating in. The principles of this exercise are going to be really similar to what we just did. So the upper body is going to stay nice and relaxed. The pelvis is going to tilt forward so that there's a slight arch in the back, but tilting the pelvis forwards is not puffing the ribcage up. So it's almost like you're still aiming to have the bottom of your ribs down onto the floor. So you're still trying to stay grounded through the rib cage. That's going to help you relax your upper body, but the pelvis does tilt forwards. And what that does is it helps you get better access to your hip muscles. So if you struggle to feel your hips in all the exercises that we're doing, changing your pelvic position, either forwards or backwards, can be the key in feeling your hips differently. But for most people, it will be about moving their pelvis slightly forwards. So we're still thinking about the toes, ankles, knees and hips being in alignment. We're watching that the toes haven't kind of snuck off to the side. And also be wary about how kind of far away from your bottom your feet are. So if your feet are really far away like this, you're going to put more strain through your lower back and you're going to find it harder to control your hip muscles. So make sure that the feet are probably about a foot's distance away from your bottom. You'll just find it easier to control things. Pelvis tilts forwards, palms facing up, hands, arms, shoulders, upper body, belly, breathing, jaw, all relaxed. Pelvis drives forwards. And what we're going to do is squeeze with our knees, hold and release the block in between our knees. So we're squeezing in, giving the block a little bit of a crush with our knees, squeezing and releasing. And we're doing this in a steady, rhythmic way. So you're trying to squeeze at probably like a 3 out of 10 level of effort. So you're not squeezing the block super, super hard. And what you're aiming for is to continue keeping this kind of rhythmic, gentle squeezing and releasing, rather than it being that you're really squeezing the block super hard and then being really like jerky and juddery when you let go. You might notice wobbles, and that's a good thing, but you're just trying to stay in as much control as possible. So backing off the intensity of the squeeze will probably help you stay a bit more controlled with that wobbliness. And as you're doing this squeeze, also make sure that you're not rocking your pelvis backwards and forwards. So you might notice that you squeeze with your knees and then rock your pelvis backwards so your lower back touches the floor. We don't want that happening. We want the pelvis to stay still in that engaged anterior position as we do the inward squeeze with the knees. So just watch that you're not moving your pelvis. Pelvis upwards, completely still. You're just moving your knees inwards. We're going to do 3 sets of 20 and we're going to have a little break in between each rep. Palms facing up, upper body relaxed. Off we go. 1, squeeze, release. 2, squeeze, release. 3, squeeze, release. 4, squeeze, release. 5, squeeze, release. 6, squeeze, release. 7, squeeze, release. 8, squeeze, release. 9, squeeze, release. 10, squeeze, release. 11, squeeze, release. 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. And in between each set of reps, we always just have a little break to allow our body to have to reset itself. So it's just a really good reminder for your brain, probably more than anything, in order to learn how to perform the exercise as well. So if you just did 60 reps continuously, you'd be more likely to lose form and forget certain bits and pieces of the cues, whereas having to reset yourself reminds you of what it is that you need to be doing. So we're going to set ourselves back up again, rocking the pelvis forwards, but the rib cage stays kind of down. We're going to keep the knees in alignment, feet in alignment with the hips, block goes in between the knees, palms are facing up, and we're going to do another set of 20, keeping our belly relaxed and our breathing nice and calm in and out of our nose. Off we go. 1, squeeze, release. The pelvis is not moving, it's not rocking backwards and forwards, which you might notice. 3, squeeze, release. 4, squeeze, release. 5, squeeze, release. 6, squeeze, release. 7, squeeze, release. 8, squeeze, release. 9, squeeze, release. 10, squeeze, release. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. Quick little break and I'll just explain what exercise we're doing and what we should be feeling. So this exercise is called Hooklying knee pillow squeezes. And as we squeeze our knees inwards, what we are doing is ever so slightly adducting our hips. So AD, alpha, delta, adducting our hips inwards. So that means moving the knees kind of towards the midline of the body. We're also slightly internally rotating our hips, but this is mainly an exercise of adduction. And your adductor muscles, you'll feel on your inner thighs. So inside of the knees, down into the groin. So that may be, hopefully, where you are feeling this exercise. Inner thighs, bit wobbly, a bit shaky. So we are waking them up and they help stabilize the movement of your hips, the movement of your pelvis. They are important muscles, and you might notice that there is a difference from side to side. So always be noticing these differences from side to side. You're also still in hip flexion, and having that movement through the pelvis in the way that we've been keeping it steady will be waking up your hip flexors a little bit too, but it's mainly an adduction exercise. Okay, final rep of 20, off we go. Tilting pelvis forwards, upper body relaxed. 1, squeeze, release. 2, squeeze, release. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. Okay, good job. So the next exercise that we're going to do, we are going to stay in our hook lying position, and we are going to change the area of our hips that we are working. So far we've done these deep front hip muscles and we've done the inner thighs, and now what we want to do is wake up the glutes, so the kind of glute maximus, the big juicy powerful glutes, or they should be powerful, but in a very sedentary society, lots of people have glutes that they can't wake up. So I know that my glutes are definitely a weak spot in my body, so I like this exercise. So everything stays the same. We're reconsidering where our toes are, our ankles are, our knees are, and our hips are. And we're keeping our pelvis still and steady once again, but this time we're not going to rock our pelvis forward. So we're not in that pelvic extension position. We're just in a relaxed pelvic position. You're not pushing the pelvis backwards and like lifting your bum up off the floor. The pelvis is just kind of like neutral and relaxed. You should feel gently lowered through your lower back, but you're not forcing it down there, because if you force it down there, you'll start using your abdominals, which we don't want. Palms facing up, upper body relaxed, focusing on that breath. And what we are going to do is isolate our glute muscles, and we're going to do the same rhythm that we just did before. So we're going to be squeezing, holding, releasing, squeezing, holding, releasing. So we're using our brain to squeeze our bottom muscles, squeezing them as tight as we can for a minute, and then fully letting go in between. And you might notice that firstly, you can't do it. So you might notice that there just doesn't seem to be a connection with your brain and your glutes. And if you're noticing that, give them a little bit of a tap, because that will encourage them to wake up, and it will just kind of remind your brain as to where they are. So that can be helpful, but also make a mental note as to which glute you find harder or easier to wake up, because there's often a difference from side to side. And secondly, make sure that when you're squeezing the glutes, you're not doing that rocking backwards of the pelvis. So the pelvis stays still. Lots of people, when they try and squeeze their glutes, they kind of push their feet into the ground to almost turn it into like a bridge movement, which is not what we're doing. We're just isolating the glutes, keeping the pelvis steady. And as we're doing this, the final thing that I'll say before we start counting the reps is that squeezing your glutes is not the same as squeezing your abdominals or squeezing your pelvic floor or squeezing your deep kind of anus muscles, for want of a better word. So lots of my clients, I find it very difficult to kind of separate sensations in this area. They think they're squeezing their glutes, but they're actually lifting their pelvic floor. So it's not a pelvic floor exercise, it's not an abdominals exercise, and it's not like a bum hole exercise. It's these big juicy glutes here that should be reacting. And initially, you might notice that you squeeze your glutes and the pelvic floor is moving too, but the more functional your glutes become and the more control you get over them, the more you will just be able to switch off your pelvic floor. So as long as you're getting a response from your glutes, and you know that eventually somewhere down the line, you should only be feeling your glutes, then you're on the right track, so don't worry about it too much. So pelvis is relaxed, it's not moving. Upper body is relaxed and not moving. We're using our brain to squeeze our glutes, but we're not moving our pelvis, we're just isolating the glutes. 20 reps, off we go. Squeeze, hold, release. 1, 2, hold, release. 3, hold, release. 4, hold, release. 5, hold, release. 6, hold, release. 7, hold, release. 8, hold, release. 9, hold, release. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. Relax off there. Kind of reset your upper body, just making sure that the palms are facing up. You're keeping your breath nice and steady. Head is relaxed on the pillow or on the floor if that's where it is. We are making sure that toes, ankles, knees and hips stay in a line, and your knees are not wobbling around as you isolate the glutes. Pelvis stays still, keeping the breath nice and steady. Off we go. 1, hold, release. 2, hold, release. 3, 4, giving them a tap if you need to. 5, we're not pushing our feet into the floor to create the movement, which you might notice that your body wants to do. You're using your glutes like completely in isolation. The feet are not pushing into the floor to kind of push your pelvis backwards. That is compensation. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Good job. Quick little break here before we start again. You hopefully are noticing that it's getting a little bit easier to control the glutes. So with a bit of effort and a bit of perseverance, you're hopefully noticing that they're kicking into action a little bit more. If they're not, a little bit like what I said with the hip flexor exercises earlier, don't worry about it too much. At some point it will happen, but you just have to keep going. So as long as you're not getting into pain with the effort of trying to wake up your glutes, then keep attempting this exercise, because at some point it will start all falling together. Okay, final set of 20. Upper body is relaxed, pelvis is still, belly is nice and relaxed and kind of moving with your diaphragmatic breathing. Toes, ankles, knees and hips in alignment. 20 more reps, off we go. 1, squeeze, release. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Okay, so we've got our hip extensors waking up there. Our glutes are our hip extensors, our hip rotators. They do lots and lots of things, but what we're trying to encourage them in that position is teaching them to wake up to aid us with hip extension, really. I don't know why I'm picking up my block. That's not what I need. What I need is my yoga strap. So with the yoga strap, you're turning it into a kind of circle position, if that's the right word to say. And we're sliding our legs through the strap, tightening it up so that when we're back in our hook lying position, our knees are still tracking in alignment with our hips. So you're setting the strap so that it's tight enough that the knees stay in alignment with your hips as you push out against the strap. So you want there to be tension against your knees. If the strap is too loose, nothing's going to happen. Or if the strap's too loose, you might then notice that your knees are kind of facing out externally, and vice versa. If the strap's too tight, your knees are going to be kind of rotating inwards. We want the kneecap tracking in alignment with the hip. And once again in this exercise, we're trying to keep the upper body still and relaxed. So palms facing up, out at about 45 degrees, relaxing the head and the neck and the breathing and the shoulders, etc. We're keeping toes, ankles, knees and hips in alignment. And what we're looking for in this exercise is the sides of our hips to wake up. So really, you should feel this exercise not quite in the same meaty place as before, but a little bit more concentrated onto the outside edge of your hips. Initially, you might find it running down the outside edge of your legs, and that's fine, that's not wrong, but the more that you do, it should be isolated a bit more here, which is where your abductors of the hips, so taking the knees away from the midline of the body, is abduction, abduction, alpha beta duction. And so that's where we're looking to feel this exercise. Again, we are not rocking the pelvis backwards and forwards here. The pelvis stays still. And you're trying to find a position where it feels kind of neutral again. So we're not rocking the pelvis forwards, so we have the strong arch in our back. And we're not smushing the pelvis and the lower back down to the floor so it's already flattened. We're just trying to find like a position where the pelvis sort of feels flat, but neither tilting forwards or tilting backwards. And I'll give you a cue in a little bit if you're still not feeling the sides of your hips waking up. So the big toe joints need to stay down throughout. You might notice that your big toe joints want to lift up as you do this exercise. Belly relaxed, pelvis is still, it's not moving backwards, which is probably the most common thing that I see. And we're going to squeeze out, hold, release. Squeeze out, hold, release. So keep going at that rhythm for me. Squeezing the knees out against the strap, holding for a beat, 3 out of 10 level of effort, and releasing. And you should be feeling the response down here at the sides of your hips. As I said, it might be a little bit more on the outside edge of the knee feeding in, and that's okay, but the more that things wake up and do their jobs properly, you'll feel this more concentrated into the outside edge of your hips. It shouldn't be your quads that you're feeling. It shouldn't be your lower back that you're feeling. It shouldn't be that your shoulders and your hands are tensing up. So if you're feeling this anywhere other than the sides of your hips, then you're experiencing compensation. You're experiencing how your body cannot abduct your hips very well, and the part of your body that is responding right now, it has learned to try and do the job of hip abduction. So hopefully, again, like I said with the other ones, with a little bit more perseverance with this exercise, provided that it's not hurting you, you'll start noticing this creep in outside of your hips. We're going to do 5 more here before we have a break. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So have a little break, relax things off, and we're going to get you set up again in a second. My tip, if you were not feeling that through the sides of your hips, is to tilt your pelvis further forwards anteriorly so that you have that arch in your lower back. Like I alluded to then, most people try and shove their pelvis down to the floor so that they're kind of lifting their bottom up and the lower back is really flat, and they're not feeling very much going on here. Tilting the pelvis forwards, if you weren't feeling anything, will probably help you feel more stuff going on in the sides of your hips. So keep that same rocking forwards that we've done throughout. Toes, ankles, knees and hips in alignment. Big toe joints stay on the floor. Upper body stays relaxed. The breathing remains steady. Off we go, 20 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, oh mine are really burning, 12, 13, big toe joints stay down, pelvis stays slightly driving forwards if you weren't feeling anything before, but other than that the pelvis stays kind of neutral, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, relaxing up. Whew. I've already done my Agoski routine this morning, so I've already kind of woken these guys up, but they are feeling that today, which is good. Sometimes I do this exercise and I don't feel very much going on here because I'm really quite dysfunctional in this part of my body. When I don't feel it, I know that my pelvis is quite wonky, but when I am feeling it, it's telling me that my pelvis is in a more balanced position, so I'm able to access these guys better than I can on other days, so that's good news for me. Okay, final time, and then we've got one more exercise after this. So, palms facing up, upper body relaxed. If you're not feeling it, roll that pelvis slightly forwards, but keep the rib cage relaxed and grounded. Big toe joints stay down. Off we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. Okay, so we're going to put our equipment to one side, and our final exercise that we're going to do is frog position, which is a hip opener. So you've probably, if you do yoga or Pilates or things like that, then you've probably done some iteration of frog before. But my version of it normally gets more things going on in the body. It sounds mysterious, but hopefully you'll understand what I mean in a second. So we're going to put the soles of our feet together and just allow our knees to hang out to the side. And what I find goes wrong for most people when they do this is, firstly, when they put their feet together, they try and have their feet too close to their bum. So by having the feet too close to the bum, if you have tight hips, you are more likely to be kind of dragged over to the side that is tighter. Your pelvis is going to be wonky and your hips actually aren't going to be opening up. That will make more sense hopefully in a second when you feel it differently. So if you have your feet too close to your bum, firstly, you're more likely to be wonky through your pelvis, so we're not creating alignment. And secondly, you're more likely to feel what I call like a passive tug or stretch at your groin muscles, so these kind of inner hips. This exercise should not feel like your body is just locking on in the inner hips. It shouldn't feel like your body's going, oh, and these guys just feel like really tight ropes that are getting more and more angry at you. So what I like to say to most people is I want them to walk their feet further away from the body and really be open-minded with this as to how far away your feet need to be from your body. Everyone's going to be different, and I can't tell you exactly where your feet need to be. It's about you feeling in as to where you feel things the most, but hopefully with me describing stuff to you, it will make sense as to what you're looking for. So what we are looking for is a position where you are not feeling an aggressive tension through the front of your groin. That's not right. And if you're getting that happening, move your feet far enough away from your body so that you're moving out of a place where you feel that going on. The next thing that you want to make sure is happening is that you have that rock forward through the pelvis, so you have a slight arch in the lower back. If the feet are too close to the body, we get in the position where we tend to roll the pelvis posteriorly, and that's not going to help us open up our hips. So we want the pelvis rolling forward slightly, and that's going to help us open our hips into more external rotation. So we are walking the feet far enough away so that we do not feel an aggressive passive tug on the front of our groin. The pelvis stays rocking forward. And the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to squeeze our big toe joints, our fifth toe joints, and our heels of our feet together. So it's like you're clapping the soles of your feet together, but you're maintaining a continuous contraction there. So you're not doing reps like we were before, you're holding the soles of your feet together. And you will hopefully notice that if your body is in the right position, if your legs are kind of in the right position, that you'll start noticing work going on or like wobbling going on. So it shouldn't feel like you're getting that, as I keep saying, that tight pull through the front of your groin. It should feel more like that you start feeling a little bit of quivering going on through your kind of inner thighs, and you might start feeling a bit of burn in that same place that we're waking up in the last exercise in the abductor presses. Some of you may start feeling things going on through the arches of your feet or through your calves. If you do, maybe you get a cramp or maybe you just feel things waking up. Again, that's a good sign. Cramp is good. It tells you that you're waking things up. But if you're getting a cramp through your feet and your calves, it tells you that you have dysfunction present through your feet and calves, and this exercise is helping with it. So it's a foot and a calf exercise, but it's also a hip opener and pelvic balancer. So there's actually quite a lot going on. And what I love about this exercise is that for most people, when they first start doing it, they can really start to get this like quivering sensation going on. And that quivering is a little bit of posture magic, because that is the alignment occurring. That's your pelvis balancing off and your hips relaxing off and coming into a better position. So if you're only feeling the quivering happening on one side, then you probably need to walk your feet further away yet again. And like I said, I can't tell you exactly how far away from your body your feet need to be, but you just need to play around with it, because there will be a position where you feel things happening on both sides and you'll be like, oh yeah, okay, that's probably what Ellie means. Remember, the pelvis is tilting forwards. We're going to do another 3 minutes here before we finish. And you're just getting a sense both in how you feel, but also with what you see, in terms of which hip feels or looks tighter. So when I look down, my left knee is slightly higher up away from the floor than my right knee is. And I know that my left hip does not externally rotate as well as my right hip does. But equally, I also notice that my right side of my pelvis is a little bit higher than my left, and I know that the right side of my pelvis is a little bit more stuck. So don't worry too much about like the technicalities of what's going on, but just observe things, because you'll hopefully notice that they start changing in time. So keeping that steady, calm breath in the upper body, in and out of the nose, sending it to the belly, palms facing up, arms relaxed, shoulders open, pelvis slightly driving forwards, and the soles of the feet continue to squeeze together to help open up the hips. We've got 2 minutes left here. I'm going to shut up. Find that sweet spot where you feel stuff going on, and you're always just trying to get into the nooks and crannies that your body is trying to avoid. So enjoy weird sensations, strange sensations, cramping and wobbling, because that is signs that things are changing. So off we go. Steady, calm, diaphragmatic breathing, but keeping the work through the soles of the feet, making sure that one foot doesn't work harder than the other. Got 50 seconds left. Soles of the feet squeezed together. Keep trying to tilt that pelvis a bit further forwards, because you might notice that as things warm up, you're able to get a little bit more pelvic extension. But pelvic extension is not the same as just thrusting your rib cage upwards. So don't overly move your rib cage if things don't appear to be moving. Just find a bit where you get some wobbles and just have that faith that it's doing you good. I keep forgetting to squeeze the soles of my feet together. 10 seconds left. 10, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So that's our frog. I hope you enjoyed today's gentle hips routine. and if you enjoyed it, keep doing it. So if you found things difficult, if you found that things kind of weren't waking up in the way that I was describing, just keep on going. As long as it didn't hurt you, it's doing you good, and at some point you'll start noticing that function restore back to your body.